Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Essays on the Gita, with our beloved Ranga, who is back with us. And we are on page 60, my page, Arjuna in his reply to Krishna. And it is the chapter, The Creed of the Aryan Fighter.
So, I will read the para, but to put things in perspective, we could say in a very general way that there are three planes, or rather three groups of planes, and in each one the laws change. So, the level 1 is the one in which man is identified with his body, mind, life. He is ignorant. He does not know his own soul. He thinks that what he is seeing in the physical world is real. This is the condition, and it's a condition of ignorance, suffering, and identification with your body, mind, life, which is the most outermost part of you, and you are liable to make mistakes, wrong actions, wrong thoughts, wrong feelings. This is level 1.
In level 1, can anyone be doing sadhana?
You start from there. You do start from there. That's the starting point. When the being has been sufficiently purified, and yet you feel the need of purifying yourself. You start from there, and then you graduate to level 2. Which is level 2? You are no more identified with your body, mind, life. You are identified, you have realized your own soul or self. You realize that your body, mind, life are instruments given to you for that particular life. And at the end of life, those instruments will disappear, go back to where they came from, that is to matter, to life, and to mind. And only what will remain is either your psychic being or yourself. The psychic being normally. Then the psychic being ruminates after death and decides what it should do to take the next birth. It comes down again with a new body, new life, and a new mind. This is level 2. So you realize that you are not the body, mind, life. This is level 2. But you are the ignorance has largely disappeared, but still you have no control over the body, mind, life. You are free. The consciousness is not imprisoned in the body, mind, life. This is level 2. This mostly people are satisfied with that because they feel liberation is enough. But there is normally there is not enough control over the body, mind, life. Some amount of control can come, some amount of enjoyment, pure enjoyment, bliss, power also can come, but it's never complete. The third level is where everything becomes complete, and you have power, and you have enjoyment, and you have also the realization of what you are. You have identified yourself with the Supreme. So these are the three states. In the Gita, the Arjuna is at level 1. So he is subject to the impacts of the physical world. He is subject to sorrow and pleasure. He is subject to the impacts from the physical world, and he feels them. He is affected by them.
And the moral laws. The moral laws.
Yes, the moral laws also apply. But the moral laws also apply often partly in the second level also. We must also note that these three levels which we spoke of, they are not hermetically sealed and separated. They sometimes percolate into each other. Even when a man is in level 1 and not at all in a perfect condition, but his past lives he has had enough development, then he can get a glimpse of spiritual truths. And that's when the interest in spiritual life starts. So there can be a mixture of all these things. So Arjuna is in level 1, and he is stunned by the fact that he has to kill his own guru, his own grandfather, his own in-laws, and he says, I can't do this. He is affected by the impacts of the physical world. What Krishna is telling him to do, Go to level 2 where you are not impacted by the physical world. You are free from the forces in the physical world and you become an instrument in the hands of the divine. Do what you are told to do by the divine because he does not make any mistakes. So this is, the Gita stops there. Srimamda goes one step further to the, and Srimamda also says that the time was not ripe for the Gita to go to the third one. Because after all, you have to climb step by step. For everything, there is a time. You can't go from level 1 to level 3. Even in your school, you go gradually from class 1 to class 2 to class 3. So this is exactly what happens in spiritual life also. So with this background, we will now read the para. But such is not the compassion which actuates Arjuna in the rejection of his work and mission. That is not compassion but an impotence, full of a weak self-pity, a recoil from the mental suffering which his act must entail on himself. I see not what shall thrust from me the sorrow that dries up the senses. And of all things, self-pity is among the most ignoble and un-Aryan of moods. So, he is affected by the prospect of killing his own people. He is invaded by disgust and pity, and he is, as we discussed, he is at level 1. So he is saying that he will not fight. But the Gita says very clearly, this is not the true compassion of God. This is self-pity. I am not capable of doing this horrible deed. Okay? But you should be able to do whatever the divine tells you to do. But he is not capable of that. It is self-pity and weakness. Impotence. See? You are not strong enough to bear the idea of killing your own people. Because if the divine tells you to do, you have to do it. It is something you have to rise to level 2, where your ideas of moral ideas are all not valid anymore. So, its pity for others is also a form of self-indulgence. So how is that? Self-indulgence. You are protecting yourself from something which you think is a sin. So you are actually limiting your own being and saying that I will not be able to do this work.
But it's not sorrow or grief, is it?
It is sorrow and grief also. That also is there. How could I do this? So it's not sorrow in the sense that he has done something wrong, but it is something that I have to do, I can't do it. So its pity for others is also a form of self-indulgence. It is the physical shrinking of the nerves from the act of slaughter. The physical shrinking of the nerves from the act of slaughter, the egoistic emotional shrinking of the heart from the destruction of the Dhritarashtrians, because they are one's own people, and without them life will be empty. So we spoke about the weakness of the nerves, and a very good example of the weakness of the nerves is the reaction of certain people when they see blood. We spoke of that last time also. I know of somebody who was a very sensible, very intelligent person, but when he took his dog to the vet and the dog had to be operated, he saw blood and he fainted. So this is clearly a weakness of the vital. There is a weakness in the vital. You can't bear this, the impact, the color, and the you associate blood with something else. Okay, so he can't. So this is the same thing that he is, but he has not yet drawn blood, but he is thinking that that is what will happen. I can't do it. So that's why it is self-pity and self-indulgence. You are permitting yourself to be not strong enough. It is the physical shrinking of the nerves from the act of slaughter. This weakness of the vital is also very evident in many cases when you are going in the road and suddenly there is an accident in the road and a traffic accident is there, and suppose a man starts bleeding, you don't know what to do and you feel and you don't want to go to help because you feel you are not capable of it. There are others who rush and do what has to be done. This also is a nervous reaction of weakness. So it can come in many ways. So, physical shrinking of the nerves from the act of slaughter, the egoistic emotional shrinking of the heart from the destruction of the Dhritarashtrians, because the Dhritarashtrians are the cousins of the Pandavas. They are all a big joint family, but how could I kill my own people? That's what he's saying. One's own people. And without them, life will be empty. This pity is a weakness of the mind and senses. Some have spoken about it, the physical shrinking. So that's why the senses are physical, vital. The nerves are not purely physical, are not purely vital. They are a mixture of they are the ones that the nerves carry the biocurrents, which means they are physical and yet they are carrying the vital prana. So it's a mixture of the two. So senses are that. A weakness which may well be beneficial to men of a lower grade of development. So Srivendra is giving a very interesting pointer that there are some people who are insensitive and when they see murder they are not affected at all. This is not out of strength but out of utter insensitivity. To such people, this physical weakness is an advantage.
Yes.
That's what he's saying. So the insensitive man must learn to be responsive to things. This pity is a weakness of the mind and senses, a weakness which may well be beneficial to men of a lower grade of development who have to be weak because otherwise they will be hard and cruel, for they have to cure the harsher by the gentler forms of sensational egoism. They have to call in tamas, the debile principle. Debile, weak, infirm. Okay? To help sattva, the principle of light, in quelling the strength and excess of their rajasic passions. Of their rajasic passions. So when there is too much of rajas, and you are not yet capable of sattva, then you have to use a little bit of tamas to reduce your rajasic tendency. Interesting. Instead of going up, you have to come down, the hard man. Okay. But this way is not for the developed Aryan man who has to grow not by weakness but by an ascension from strength to strength. So it depends on the man. The one who is very insensitive has to use tamas to be able to remove excess rajas. But the one who is already developed has to not go down but go up and become sattvic. But this way is not for the developed Aryan man who has to grow not by weakness but by an ascension from strength to strength. Arjuna is a divine man, the master man in the making, and as such he has been chosen by the gods. Now, this sentence can confuse you. Arjuna is a divine man. Srivendra is saying that he is an ordinary man. He is not. He said that earlier. So you have to read the second phrase. Arjuna is a divine man, comma, the master man in the making. So then it becomes clear. He is a divine man in the making, and not yet. Okay, so and as such he has been chosen by the gods. He has a work given to him. He has God beside him in his chariot. He has a heavenly bow Gandiva in his hand. He has the champions of unrighteousness, the opponents of the divine leading in the world, in his front. Not his is the right to determine what he shall do or not do according to his emotions and his passions, or to shrink from a necessary destruction by the claim of his egoistic heart and reason, or to decline his work because it will bring sorrow and emptiness to his life, or because its earthly result has no value to him in the absence of the thousands who must perish. So, at level 1, all men make mistakes. Okay. But when you go to level 2, you realize that that's a state of ignorance and you start opening up to the divine will. So you try not to be, in fact, you don't possess your body, mind, life. So you are not subject to your body, mind, life, but you open out normally to the higher will. And that would take you to level 3. But they are quite satisfied with getting rid of level 1 and ignorance and all the sorrow and suffering of the physical world. They are free. All that is weak falling from his higher nature. So all this petty and weakness, all that is weak.
Is a weak.
All that is weak.
Is a weak.
Yeah.
All that is
all
a
that
weak.
That's why. All that is a weak falling, all that is a weak falling from the higher nature. So, I have been reading it wrong.
Yeah.
All that
There
is
we
a
are.
weak falling
Yes.
from
yes.
his higher nature.
Yes. Good.
I was reading all that is, all that is a weak falling from his higher nature. He has to see only the work that must be done, kartavyam karma, to hear only the divine command, breathe through his warrior nature, to feel only for the world and the destiny of mankind, calling to him as its God-sent man to assist its march and clear its path of the dark armies that beset it. He has to carry out God's will. That's what Srimad is saying. You can't carry out your own will. So that he can do only by rising to the next level. That's why now Sri Krishna will give him the knowledge of how to go to the next level. He will teach him Karma Yoga, he will teach him Jnana Yoga, he will teach him all these things. He wants a guidance at his level. But at his level there can be no guidance. So the guidance can come only rise to the next level.
Is it, as I understand it here, a basic light against the darkness?
Yeah. To clear the path of the dark armies that beset it. So, what's the question?
It's light against darkness.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you can get the light only when you open to the divine will.
Right. Right.
So rise to the second level. That's what he's saying. Arjuna, in his reply to Krishna, admits the rebuke even while he strives against and refuses the command. He is aware of his weakness and yet accepts subjection to it. It is poorness of spirit he owns that has spin away from him his true heroic nature. His whole consciousness is bewildered in its view of right and wrong, and he accepts the divine friend as his teacher. But the emotional and intellectual props on which he had supported his sense of righteousness have been entirely cast down, and he cannot accept a command which seems to appeal only to his old old standpoint and gives him no new basis for action. He attempts still to justify his refusal of the work and puts forward in its support the claim of his nervous and sensational being, which shrinks from the slaughter with its sequel of blood-stained enjoyments, the claim of his heart, which recoils from the sorrow and emptiness of life that will follow his act, the claim of his customary moral notions, which are appalled by the necessity of slaying his gurus, Bhishma and Drona, the claim of his reason, which sees no good but only evil results of the terrible and violent work assigned to him. He is resolved that on the old basis of thought and motive he will not fight, and he awaits in silence the answer to objections that seem to him unanswerable. It is these claims of Arjuna's egoistic being that Krishna sets out first to destroy in order to make place for the higher law which will transcend all egoistic motives of action. So, first of all, Sri Krishna has to point out to him that all your decisions are wrong. They belong to ignorance and weakness. So you have to rise to the next level. That's what he has to say.
And yet he accepts Krishna as friend and teacher.
Because that also happens to us. I know that I am doing wrong, and yet I accept I do it. This is also, Gita has said that, the famous German poet.
Yeah.
And many others also have said that. Even some Greek philosophers also. I know the good, but I choose the evil. I can't help it. I am forced to do it. You do realize very often that what you're doing is wrong, and yet you can't resist. You do it. So this is what Arjuna. And Arjuna is saying in this, he is saying, I know that I admit that this is a weakness in me, but I am your disciple and you teach me what to do and what not to do. Okay, this is the chapter 2, verse 5 and 6 and 7. So he says that I am your disciple and you teach me what to do and give me a course of action which will make it clear to me what I should do and what not do. I accept that I am wrong. Okay, so that's what he's saying. If the para is clear, we can go on to the next. But I think it's quite clear, huh?
Yes.
Now, the answer of the teacher proceeds upon two different lines. First, a brief reply founded upon the highest ideas of the general Aryan culture in which Arjuna has been educated. Secondly, another and larger founded on a more intimate knowledge, opening into deeper truths of our being, which is the real starting point of the teaching of the Gita. This first answer relies on the philosophic and moral conceptions of the Vedantic philosophy and the social idea of duty and honor, which formed the ethical basis of Aryan society. Arjuna has sought to justify his refusal on ethical and rational grounds, but he has merely cloaked by words of apparent rationality the revolt of his ignorant and unchastened emotions. He has spoken of the physical life and the death of the body as if these were the primary realities, but they have no such essential value to the sage and the thinker. The sorrow for the bodily death of his friends and kindred is a grief to which wisdom and the true knowledge of life lend no sanction. The enlightened man does not mourn either for the living or the dead, for he knows that suffering and death are merely incidents in the history of the soul. The soul, not the body, is the reality. All these kings of men, for whose approaching death he mourns, have lived before. They will live again in the human body. For as the soul passes physically through childhood and youth and age, so it passes on to the changing of the body. The calm and the wise mind, the dhira, the thinker who looks upon life steadily and does not allow himself to be disturbed and blinded by his sensations and emotions, is not deceived by material appearances. He does not allow the clamor of his blood and his nerves and his heart to cloud his judgment or to contradict his knowledge. He looks beyond the apparent facts of the life of the body and senses to the real fact of his being and rises beyond the emotional and physical desires of the ignorant nature to the true and only aim of the human existence. So this is clearly he is at level 1. He has to rise to level 2. He has to realize that the death of the body is not something as disastrous as he thinks it to be. He is going to take birth again. The death of the body, mind, life is something natural that will happen in any case. So that he should not mourn. That's what is being said. The soul is not the body. The soul, not the body, is a reality. This is the essence of the whole paragraph. He has to realize that he is pure soul, pure consciousness, and not the body, mind, life.
Has anyone come close to the way Sri Aurobindo has written about the Gita?
Oh yes, but with experience, maybe not by realization. But I think Nolida had realized. Nolida had realized because there is a report. Of course, the report is somebody else's. But it was Anima who asked him once, at what stage of consciousness are you now? So he is reported to have said to her that I am mostly in the overmind consciousness and sometimes in the supermind. This is the report that she has given. There are some who doubt her report. But this is the only report we have. But one thing is sure, that Nolida was certainly a yogi and he would have got his liberation. There is no doubt about it. There is absolutely no doubt. So, because even mother used to give him respect. So many times she used to ask him, about Purusha and Prakriti, particularly in the class one day, in Wednesday class, she said that I don't go by this Purusha and Prakriti, because Purusha and Prakriti is the male and the female aspect, whereas for her, the divine is neither male nor female. So there is no gender for the divine. So she was not very much in favor of all this. There is a truth to the Purusha Prakriti principle. There is a truth to it. But it's not gender. She is denying the gender part. It's a consciousness and the force. And the force is interpreted as feminine because in the physical world, it is a force that creates. It is woman that creates the child.
She is known as the creatrix.
Yes, that's right. So that's why the aspect of gender is added on, but it's not necessary to add gender. In fact, she had an experience once of her body in the supernatural world where it is absolutely sexless. She describes that in great detail. So that's why she's fully justified in not accepting the Purusha Prakriti principle. But she told Nalini, I will not speak about it, but you can ask Nalini about it. And Nalini, of course, in his humble way said, If mother can't speak about it, nor can I. So, yes, not only that, definitely. Okay. But many of his others, with experience they had. Niruddha certainly had experiences. Amal had also psychic experiences, not the self.
But I'm referring to how Sri Aurobindo has written essays on the Gita. Has anyone else written closely in that line?
Oh, you mean that way? Acha, okay.
Yes.
So, Sri Aurobindo's essay on the Gita is accepted as an absolute masterpiece of the interpretation of the Gita. But there are some, I know of one or two foreigners who say that he has introduced his own ideas into the Gita's teachings. There is an element of truth in that because his own experience he is doing, and secondly, the Gita does not go beyond the overmind. But Sri Aurobindo is speaking from the overmind level of consciousness. So he is basing himself on his own experiences. So he does bring in those things and he interprets according to his experience. But one question arises. Can anyone be absolutely free in his interpretation of anything without his nature intervening? Doubtful.
Doubtful.
So the criticism is not valid. That Sri Aurobindo has introduced his own ideas into the Gita. But his interpretation of the Gita is accepted as absolutely the last word. So this is what. So the crux of the whole thing is he looks beyond the apparent facts of the life of the body and senses to the real fact of his being. And what is that real fact? You are soul, not the body. This is the thing. So Sri Krishna is telling him that you have to rise above your idea that you are the body and the others also are bodies. You have to rise beyond that and go to the next level where you know that the soul, the bodies are destructible and they will be destroyed in any case. So don't be misled by your idea that the body is, death of the body is important. That's what he's saying. The answer of the teacher proceeds upon two different lines. Now that's exactly what we spoke of in the beginning. He speaks about it at level 1, where he is making a mistake even at level 1. Because he is a Kshatriya and he has to fulfill his Kshatriyahood. And he is refusing to do that. So that's what he points out at level, the different two lines. The lower line, you are not fulfilling your nature of Kshatriyahood. That's what he points out to him. Secondly, the spiritual aspect. So that's why the two lines. First, a brief reply founded upon his highest ideas of the general Aryan culture in which Arjuna has been educated. Secondly, another and larger founded upon a more intimate knowledge opening into deeper truths of our being, which is the real starting point of the teaching of the Gita. This is level 2. So level 1, he is still making a mistake there. That is being pointed out to him. Then he is saying that you have to rise to the next level. You are not the body, you are the soul. And there are a lot of descriptions of the transience of the body, that the body can't be, we'll come to that. It is not destructible, neither can wind dry it, nor can water cleave it, nor can weapons cleave it, nor can water wet it. It is beyond all these things. So you have to realize that you are the soul. And it's only your body, mind, life is only like you change your dress every day. You have to change your body, mind, life in this particular life and take on next. Just like changing your clothes. Old worn out clothes have to be thrown out and new clothes have to be put on. That's the image in the Gita. So, the first answer relies on the philosophic and moral conceptions of the Vedantic philosophy and the social idea of duty and honor, which formed the ethical basis of Aryan society. Each one has to fulfill his purpose in life. The Brahmin has to be a man of knowledge and teach. The Kshatriya has to fulfill his nature of governance and protection of the weak and stand up for and defend society from wrong actions. That he is not doing, Arjuna is not doing. Arjuna has sought to justify his refusal on ethical and rational grounds. But reason is very limited, and ethics is also not the last stage of human behavior. He has spoken of the physical life and the death of the body as if these were primary realities, but they have no such essential value to the sage and the thinker. Death has no importance. Death of the body has no importance for the wise man. The sorrow for the bodily death of his friends and kindred is a grief to which wisdom and the true knowledge of life lend no sanction. He should not be worried at all about death. Okay. The enlightened man does not mourn either for the living or the dead, for he knows that suffering and death are merely incidents in the history of the soul. The soul repeatedly takes on bodies which die and repeatedly takes on new bodies, and again they die, and it goes on in this way. The soul, not the body, is the reality. All these kings of men, for whose approaching death he mourns, have lived before. They will live again in the human body. For as the soul passes physically through childhood and youth and age, so it passes on to the changing of the body. The calm and wise mind, the dhira. The word dhira is very interesting. It means one who is able to, from the word dhri, to hold on. He is not disturbed and he is not easily swayed. He is wise. And when you hold on to what you have to do, you are wise. So dhira is also wise, steadfast, and heroic even. So it's an interesting word. The thinker who looks upon life steadily and does not allow himself to be disturbed and blinded by his sensations and emotions, is not deceived by material appearances. Even in ordinary life, we know that our desires and our vital can go wrong. And so the man who is a bit wiser than the others uses his mind to control his vital feelings and sensations. So this is what he has to do. But he's not doing that. Arjuna is not doing that. He is falling a prey to all his sensations. He does not allow the clamor of his blood and his nerves and his heart to cloud his judgment or to contradict his knowledge. This is wonderful. Look at the clamor of his blood and his nerves. Beautiful way of putting it. It's a body that starts reacting. We know that the body reacts sometimes with emotions. Okay. If sudden surprise comes, your hair stands up, horripilation occurs. The body is reacting. Or if you if you are upset, your stomach will be upset. You'll get an upset stomach. Okay. If you are angry, your body will start shaking. I've seen that in many. So this is the body reacts. The body must not react. You must be absolutely capable of withstanding the impacts of the physical world without it affecting you in any way. Even if the body is not affected, the vital is very often affected. In Arjuna's case, his body is also affected. He starts trembling and he drops his bow and says, I will not fight. So, even the man whose body is not affected, the vital is very much affected, and the mind also. You can get very disturbed. Suppose you have a bad experience with somebody, that will disturb you for a whole day sometimes. So that disturbance should not be there at all. So that's what it is. He does not allow the clamor of his blood and his nerves and his heart to cloud his judgment or to contradict his knowledge. He looks beyond the apparent facts of the life of the body and senses to the real fact of his being and rises beyond the emotional and physical desires of the ignorant nature to the true and only aim of human existence. So he's saying the real fact of his being. And Srivamdasa starts the next para with, what is that real fact? That highest aim. And then he says, so this we'll read next time. We'll keep it for next time.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste all.